Hi everyone! Today we'll be talking about one of my favorite artists, as you may be able to tell by the shirt. We're talking Fiona Apple. Now I've had the pleasure of listening to her discography for the past 2 weeks to come up with the cream of the crop. I'm calling this, undeniably, the top 10 best Fiona Apple songs. And just to stir things up a little bit, I'll have my pick for an overrated song at the end. But in the meantime, let's get to the top 10. At number 10, we have To Your Love. From When the Pawn Hits the Conflicts, He Thinks Like a King. What he knows throws the blows when he goes to the fight. And he'll win the whole thing before he enters the ring. There's no body to batter when your mind is your might. So when you go solo, you hold your own hand. And remember that depth is the greatest of heights. And if you know where you stand, then you know where to land. And if you fall, it won't matter, because you'll know that you're right. Yes, I had to at least say it in full once, because that's what Fiona actually named it. The title is a poem she wrote as a response to fan reactions to a harsh magazine story about her. She would remark, "It came from being made fun of," but then acknowledging, "Of course it becomes a thing I'm being made fun of for." Isn't that ironic? Fiona would give a demo tape of her early songs to a friend, who happened to be babysitting the children of a music publicist, who then enjoyed it so much that she passed it along to an executive from Sony Music, which would set the wheels in motion for the teenage phenom to get a record deal. Her debut, Title, would eventually become a triple platinum hit. On her second album, she was already evolving fast. On To Your Love, staccato piano chords join in the rhythm, along with a rolling drum shuffle. Floating Chamberlain and twinkling electric piano color the sonics. Heavily treated strings follow Fiona down the rabbit hole of her conflicted emotions, calling out her lover, but also drawn to his affection like a moth to light. To Your Love is a dark and hazy dance that unfolds like film noir that early on announces When the Pawn as an unquestionable classic. At number 9, we have Shamika from Fetch the Bolt Cutters. Fiona has never been one to rush the creative process. The songs come to her as inspiration strikes. It would be 8 years between Idler Wheel and her latest album, Fetch the Bolt Cutters. Released shortly after the US shutdown for the COVID-19 pandemic, the album dives even further into Fiona's idiosyncrasies, creating joyously off-kilter art pop that seems tailor-made for the highs and lows of a global lockdown. Fetch the Bolt Cutters even won 2 Grammys once the shutdown ended long enough to have a ceremony in 2021. But by then, Fiona had quit drinking alcohol, so she skipped the gathering altogether, explaining, "I want to stay sober, and I can't do that sober." Very relatable. It's hard to keep your sanity in a room full of phonies. When Fiona wrote the song, she wasn't quite sure if Shamika was real or her memory playing tricks. Before the album was completed, she mentioned the song in an interview, and her old 3rd grade teacher read the article and emailed a photo of her former schoolmate. The two would even reconnect, with Shamika's voice included in the music video and with Fiona guesting on one of Shamika's rap tracks. In the song, Apple recalls grade school monotony, time spent carefully watching the clock and avoiding bullies, over cascading piano keys and an unconventional drum shuffle that follows Fiona's twists and turns. On the refrain, she repeats the empowering words she never forgot. Shamika said, "I had potential," with the piano and drums both accenting a percussive stomp that's like a calm moment of clarity between the chaotic storm of the verses. Shamika is a lively carousel of memories that rejects pure nostalgia and paints a vivid world of colors and grays. At number 8, we have Timps, the Sick in the Head song, from Extraordinary Machine. The sessions for Extraordinary Machine would be the most arduous of Fiona's career. It would take over 3 years to complete. Tracking first started in 2002 in Nashville, eventually moving to a mansion in LA. After sessions with the original producer John Bryan wrapped, Fiona decided she wasn't thrilled with the results. She later said, "I didn't have enough time to live with the songs before recording them, so I really didn't know what I wanted." So the work on the album basically started over from scratch, with new producer Mike Elizondo, who had played bass on When the Pawn. Only 2 songs would remain untouched from the original Brian Helms sessions. Timps was written on a cheap Yamaha electric keyboard at Fiona's home, a rarity for her, as most of her compositions are typically written on piano. The original demo had a timpani sound, which is where its title comes from. Some called Elizondo a strange choice to produce, as his resume included hip-hop heavyweights like Dr. Dre and Eminem, and a low-end boom bap is added to make Timps really bump. A steady digital clap paces the rhythm, as Fiona sings about questionable decisions regarding a former flame, wondering whether they were justified or momentary insanity. She half-jokingly sings, "I'm either so sick in the head I need to be bled dry to quit, or I just really used to love him," with electric keyboards romantically swelling before she sarcastically adds, "I sure hope that's it," and the keys resolve on an ominous minor tone that casts doubt. Temps is one of the handful of Fiona songs that really jams, with a hypnotic groove full of junkyard percussion that rides for a full minute at the end of the song. It's a clear standout on Extraordinary Machine. At number 7, we have Fast As You Can from When the Pawn. Fiona's collaborations with John Bryan started on her first album, where Bryan played a plethora of instruments on all but one song. By her sophomore effort, Apple felt their styles really meshed and anointed him the producer. Bryan would work on the score for the film Magnolia that same year, and cinematic Beatlesque flourishes abound on the record. Their creative impulses fed each other. The arrangements became richer and more melodically complex, and Fiona's lyrics matured from Tidal's teenage diaries to sharp, poetic prose. When the Pawn was not as appreciated commercially as her first album, but creatively, it was a massive level up, and declared Fiona would never chase trends, and was hell-bent in following her muse. On Fast As You Can, Fiona said she channeled her thoughts about the ups and downs of relationships that were already in the excited, scattershot tempos present in the song. It starts with an accented flamenco step under strained piano chords. She practically raps aggressively during the verses, and on the chorus warns potential suitors, "Fast as you can, run, free yourself of me," with a deep, plucked stand-up bass following her words. The two sections zigzag the momentum until it drops out for the swooning, enchanting bridge, where she daydreams of things working out as the beat slows and she lays on a bed of electric keyboards. Before she entertains the thought too much, her mood sours, and the rhythm whips back into the syncopated samba stomp where she promises to soar the uneven storm. And it fades out, vamping on the groove with psychedelic Strawberry Fields freakouts echoing her blustery inner dialogue. Fast As You Can is an animated whirlwind romance that illustrates love's highs and lows in an ever-changing dynamic jitterbug. At number 6, we have Werewolf from The Idler Wheel is Wiser Than the Driver of the Screw, and whipping cords will serve you more than ropes will ever do. Fiona really loves those verbose album titles. The Idler Wheel sessions occurred in fits and starts over 4 years, all while remaining top secret, even to the record label. With no real deadline, the sessions were relaxed, and she would say she used the time in the studio to inspire her, rather than rushing in a homework assignment, resulting in a varied collection, colorfully filled to the fringes. Over the 4 years of work, Fiona had 2 notable doomed dalliances that would become lyrical fodder on the LP. One with a writer named Jonathan, who inspired the track of the same name, as well as a brief under-the-radar marriage. Never one to shy away from being visceral with her emotions, Werewolf finds Apple enraged and comparing her former flame to the mythological beast, though she concedes she may have brought it out of him. "I could liken you to a werewolf, the way you left me for dead, but I admit I provided the full moon." The song focuses on striding piano and Fiona's plaintive vocals, before slowly introducing rumbling bass drum and occasional splashes of twangy bouzouki strings. On the final chorus, a screaming playground gives her a reason to raise her voice, as she cathartically confronts her ex, while trying to find some peace among the noise, reasoning, "We could still support each other. All we gotta do is avoid each other." Werewolf finds Fiona at her rawest emotionally. With wounds still fresh, she's both full of rage and genuine compassion. She's keenly aware that mistakes of heart don't change the relationship's impact, or ultimately define her. After all, nothing wrong when a song ends in a minor key. At number 5, we have Not About Love from Extraordinary Machine. While Fiona was reworking the LP with Mike Elizondo, the John Bryan produced sessions of Extraordinary Machine were leaked onto the internet and spread like wildfire. Die-hard fans even speculated that the label rejected the original album and was holding the record hostage, even going so far as to hold demonstrations outside Sony Music offices. While the label wasn't doing anything malicious, they also didn't quite get Apple's new direction either. When they first heard Not About Love, they weren't enthusiastic about it as a single. It would take a DJ playing a bootleg version of the song, along with grassroots file sharing of the MP3, to demonstrate that they should have faith in Fiona's vision. The differences in the production between the John Bryan sessions and the official release is especially stark on Not About Love. In the technically unreleased first draft, the song is heavily embellished with trembling strings and features no drums at all. On the final, the tremolo string section is removed, and the clear spotlight is back on Fiona and her busy, pulsating piano. Questlove from The Roots mans the drum kit, and his jazzy inflections add a dynamic dimension that perfectly suit the song. Starting subtle and light, and dramatically igniting in the chorus, as Fiona's chords get heavier and she protests, "This is not about love, 'cause I'm not in love." During the bridge, the shuffle follows Fiona's manic tempo, becoming more animated as she rushes through a rambling kiss-off. While the bootleg version caused a stir, the reworked version was even more impressive. Not About Love unfolds like a dashing ballet in several acts that leads you on a head-spinning journey to a thrilling conclusion that keeps you on the edge of your seat. At number 4, we have Criminal from Tidal. When Fiona's debut album was released, it was politely received, and she would even play Shadowboxer on Saturday Night Live to promote it. But Tidal had modest success. It wouldn't be until a full year after its release and the 4th single from the LP, Criminal, that Apple would have her first chart hit on the Billboard Top 100. Criminal made Fiona a star, with assistance from a controversial video that conservative critics labeled heroin chic with exploitative undertones. Although viewing now, it's rather tame by today's standards. Of all songs off of Tidal, it was one written last. Her record label was asking for a bona fide hit to include on her debut. So Fiona says when they went out to lunch, she wrote the tune in just 45 minutes. To prove to them and to herself that she could. Later explaining, "I could force myself to do the work, but only if someone is right up behind me." Despite the last-minute rush, it's far from a slapdash term paper. Criminal is a sizzling pop smash that is incredibly confident and assured for a young prodigy, still only a teenager. Criminal leans into the title, sounding dangerous and provocative. Fiona cast herself as the villain for making a mistake in a relationship. She walks the line between self-loathing and schadenfreude. She sulks, "I've been careless with a delicate man, and it's a sad, sad world when a girl will break a boy just because she can," amidst a small army of dreamy electric keyboards. By the chorus, the energy explodes as Fiona's voice pleads for penance on one of her sharpest, most memorable hooks, with blaring digital horns on the bridge pushing the song to towering, melodramatic heights. Criminal is a sinister, mesmerizing jam that showed the world the unmistakable, blinding talent of Fiona Apple. At number 3, we have Extraordinary Machine from the album of the same name. Prior to Fiona's debut album, she had never performed live to an audience. After wrapping up the tour for her second album, she had been touring relentlessly for several years and was exhausted. Apple seriously contemplated retiring altogether. She said after When the Pawn, "I didn't have anything left in me to write about. I just figured if the songs came to me, they came to me. And if not, oh well, it's been fun." In 2002, Fiona and John Bryan met for a friendly weekly lunch. Bryan had recently gotten out of a 5-year relationship and begged Apple to make another album, pleading that he needed work that he could take refuge in. Fiona would agree, and Bryan approached her label with strict stipulations on a new record, including not having a deadline. While Apple would decide to re-record the album later with Mike Elizondo, there were no hard feelings between her and Bryan. They would still regularly perform together. Extraordinary Machine was one of 2 songs that survived the initial Bryan-produced sessions to make the final. Carefully composed Baroque orchestration with light marimba and chiming bells accent a graceful melody, as Fiona confidently tells any anxious observers not to worry about her. "If there was a better way to go, then it would find me. I can't help it. The road just rolls behind me. Be kind to me or treat me mean. I'll make the most of it. I'm an extraordinary machine." While the tune seems light as a feather, with its nimble arrangement adorned with entrancing strings, Apple touts her potent courage outside her comfort zone, turning her independence into a quiet victory worth celebrating. Extraordinary Machine is a delicate music box cabaret that reveres Fiona's resilient inner strength with dogged self-determination and fierce melodic sensibility. At number 2, we have Every Single Night from The Idler Wheel. With unlimited time and without the watchful eye of nosy record executives, it was the perfect time for Fiona to begin producing her own compositions during the Idler Wheel sessions. While she had always had strong visions of her songs in the past, rising to the key role of shaping the sonics was truly the butterfly emerging from the cocoon. The LP and her subsequent work would feel unmistakably singular, as if you paired your Bluetooth right into Fiona's ever-active mind. As both the opening track and the first single from Idler Wheel, Every Single Night is boldly emotive, rhythmically sparse, and announced a thrilling new chapter in Apple's career. The twilight mood starts eerily calm, with Fiona's rich mezzo-soprano over Fragile Celesta, played by her co-producer Charlie Drayton. Despite his day job as her touring drummer, the song features nearly no percussion at all. Apple spells out her complex creative process. These ideas of mine percolate the mind, trickle down the spine, warm the belly, swell into a blaze. The song slowly builds, along with her simmering endorphins, until they spike with the fiery chorus. Every single night's a fight with my brain. With Fiona's voice howling like primal scream therapy, along with dissonant piano chords and tumbling drum rolls. The temperature cools down in the refrain as she sensitively sings, "I just want to feel everything," as if her inner thoughts were apologizing for what she has to endure in the name of her art. Every Single Night is an inventive pop music masterpiece, where Fiona Apple details the agony and ecstasy of her creative endeavors with a brilliant, full spectrum of empathy. At number 1, we have Paper Bag from When the Pond. After one of the recording sessions for Tidal, Apple's father was driving her back home through bustling Los Angeles traffic. Sitting in the passenger seat and peering out the window, she was certain she spotted a dove flying by. She immediately thought it was a sign. The Tidal sessions were draining. Dealing with a whole team of engineers and professionals was much more difficult than simply working on music in the bliss of isolation that she was used to. Seeing the bird appear was like the universe letting her know to persevere, that everything would be alright. The passing karmic dream was short-lived, however, when the dove started falling and she realized it was simply a plastic bag. The positive thought may have been short-lived, but the image stuck with her, and on her next album, she would change the material of the bag to paper, as it sounded better sung out loud. On Paper Bag, Fiona uses the brief moment as a metaphor for how hopeful promise can lead to disappointment over a breezy, melancholic sway. A subdued drum brush shuffle escorts Apple's sprightly piano, along with jazzy, plucked stand-up bass. She relates that fateful dove to the guy she's crushing on. I was having a sweet fix of a daydream of a boy, whose reality I knew was a hopeless to be had. Horns are introduced softly at the end of the first chorus, becoming more prevalent in the second verse, gently soothing the chord progression and gradually becoming more spirited. In the chorus, Fiona equates the need to find affection with being emotionally famished. With the poetic prose, hunger hurts, but starving works, when it costs too much to love. It ends with a gorgeous love-lorn coda from the brass section, as if Fiona is once again gazing out the window as the world continues to spin. In spite of its sadness, the song's yearning desire to keep hope alive is uplifting and universally relatable. Paper Bag is a surefire fan favorite because it cuts right to the emotional core, with Fiona's pitch-perfect earnest lyrics accompanying a soaring, unforgettable melody. It remains a dulcet marvel, completely suspended in time, and Fiona Apple's very best. And now, I'll add 2 more songs that almost made the list. The first would be Window. Whether on the original John Bryan take or the final version, this song just grooves. On the unreleased version, it's a spooky funeral procession that goes bump in the night. On the LP, it has some Cajun zydeco, full of stomping piano and muted brass bursts. The tune has her funkiest breakdown, where she croons over bass and drums before leading to a smooth horn countermelody. At the end, the band and Fiona simply strut, vamping the rhythm, stretching to an extended jam that lasts over 5 epic minutes. Window might be the most fun song in Fiona's catalog. The other near miss would be Daredevil. At first, the song is as similarly sparse and unadorned as Every Single Night, with drumming that sounds like hands slapping on your lap, with jolts of slightly out-of-tune piano. The initial impression is deceiving. Daredevil is a feisty, passionate fireball. The percussion never gets particularly hard, but the constant rustling keeps the energy kinetic, and the momentum chugging, playing off of Fiona's powerful piano jabs, and a gleeful wild card refrain. Don't let me ruin me. I may need a chaperone. Daredevil is a show-stopping tightrope walk without a net, and deserves to be mentioned among her best. Finally, let's talk about what I consider to be Fiona Apple's most overrated song, and that is Shadowboxer. Being overrated doesn't make it a bad song, but it's in the top 3 of most listened to Fiona songs. And personally, it wouldn't even make my top 3 of songs off Tidal. My guess is it gets a lot of residual goodwill for being her first single. The first time you hear a great artist, it's hard not to be endeared to that particular tune. While it seems to have serious staying power, I'm still not sure why it was the first single from Tidal. Or more confusingly, why Criminal was the 4th single from the album. Who was making the decisions over there at Sony? It was a good thing in the 90s that albums were permitted to get 4 chances. It's hard enough to get 1 shot these days. It's not surprising to me that it didn't make much of a splash at the time. The song does very little to differentiate itself from the Lilith Fair crowd. Shadow Boxer moves at a languid pace that stretches the smoky melodrama over 5 minutes, and it certainly feels like it. The verses are drawn out, with 3 for every chorus, which feels like 1 too many. The chorus really takes its time, not appearing until a full 2 minutes into the song. The radio in the 90s was different for sure, but that's a long wait for the hook. Fiona would blossom into an incredible lyricist. However, on the tune, the words are fairly generic outside the clever metaphor of the chorus. To me, Slow Like Honey is a superior song if the label preferred leading with a sultry lounge singer burner. But it's a real head scratcher to me that they would choose this over Criminal or Sleep to Dream, another clear-cut classic on the record. If you wouldn't mind, please enlighten me as to why Shadow Boxer is so beloved. Maybe there is something I'm missing. It's a good song, especially when you consider it was written when Fiona was a teenager. But when it gets millions of more listens than most of the incredible works of art she would follow it up with, I can't help but feel it's a little overrated. As you're still watching, I wanted to share a deep cut as well. For that, I'm shining a light on Dole Tool. This would be the first song Fiona ever wrote for a film. Director Judd Apatow specifically reached out to her to create a song for This Is 40, and she actually wrote 2, but the second, Cosmonauts, didn't make the cut, and would later be reworked for Fetch the Bolt Cutters. For some reason, any official version of Dole Tool has been scrubbed from the internet and removed from Spotify. That's a crying shame, because it's a fantastic song. It starts with a tick-tock metronome rhythm, and then it unfolds with shimmering mandolin with Fiona fired up, dropping F-bombs and generally not giving a damn. Dashing with striding piano and whining bluegrass fiddle, she sounds angry, but the energy is boisterous. Most likely due to some weird licensing issue, it's effectively a lost song at the moment, but Dole Tool definitely warrants a spot on your playlist. So there you have it. That was undeniably the top 10 best Fiona Apple songs. So, how wrong was I? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What's your top 3? Do you think Shadow Boxer is one of her best songs? Let me know. And if there's any artist you'd like to see me rank, let me know in the comments below. Hope you stick around, and thank you for watching. Of course, it becomes a thing that I made. Okay. The title is a poem. Poem? Once I get through that whole title, it's like, oh, okay. Apple would fetch the bolt before she starts and fierce melodic sensibility.
Just suddenly get a list out of nowhere.
Sensibility. To the mythological beast. Escorts Apple's splite. When Fiona's apples, her apples, and whipping cords will serve you more than the ropes ever do.
It's literally written out.
I still just add words. Oh boy.
Well, you know what this title could need? More words.
Yeah. Let me add a couple.
Let me help Fiona out a little bit here.